No matter your design style, there is something to be said for having a strong point of view. Perhaps no one knows this better than the designer, someone who helps the client hone their preferences into a coherent expression of personal style. A warm welcome from me, Robin Santini, your interior design course educator. I hope that you're all doing well and enjoying your module 2 so far. I've seen some great work that you've been producing over the last couple of weeks, and I can only see improvements. Let's start off today's lesson by looking at our core objectives. Firstly, we start by understanding the meaning of sourcing. We then jump into understanding the best sourcing practices. We understand important factors when sourcing, and lastly, we apply effective sourcing techniques. But before we get into the lesson, let's start off with a little quote by Robert Couturier. In the case of not obeying the rules of design, something becomes incredibly personal. It becomes your own, and it also becomes something that nobody else shares because it's your own eye. With that being said, we jump into lesson 6 of module 2 on our interior design journey. Let's get sourcing. Material and products are a huge part of what interior designers do on a daily basis. In this lesson, we look at materials and where to find them for our projects. Suppliers are teams or groups of people that interior designers deal with on the daily, so we dive into the process of dealing with suppliers and sourcing our products. Part of our responsibility in the design development process of our design timeline is to specify finishes that will feature on our projects. So what finishes are you going to use for your countertop? What carpets are you intending in using in your living and boardroom areas? What fabrics are you going to allocate to your curtain and your couches? During the design development phase, while creating our scheme, we need to be able to specify the finishes that we are proposing for the final project. Where do you find all of these finishes? Where are the finishes that are relevant to your project? How do we show the client these finishes? These are all important questions that we are going to answer as we progress through this lesson. But let's start off by looking at what finishes we have on your project. Before we answer these questions, we're going to take a step back and define what we mean by finishes. This is a word that you're going to hear almost every day in the design industry. So, can anyone tell me what I mean when I speak about finishes? What am I referring to when I speak about your project finishes? You can pop your answers in your Morpheus text box or jot them down in your sketchbooks. What do I mean when I refer to finishes? So, when we use the term interior finishing or finishes, we use it to describe the elements in an interior project that are fixed in place. The finishes are generally fixed or attached to a structural element of the space. So finishes refer to how a space has been finished off, what materials are used, and what materials are visible when we walk into the space. Let's look at an example. So in this case, if we've got a wall that's got a paint finish on or a wallpaper, either of those two would be considered your finishes. So if you look at the example on your screen, we've got a paint finish, and this would typically be applied to a wall. So let's look at how we would define or describe this finish. I would start off by listing the paint type or the paint name. So in this case, our product is a Plascon paint finish. So in my description, I would say Plascon paint finish. I would then proceed by adding the color of the product. And in this case, as we can see, our color is Ravine. I would follow that by the code of the product or the code of the color. And in this case, our code is 62. And then I would add a specification. So this might apply specifically to fabric or wallpaper, but specifically maybe the range of the fabric or the range of the wallpaper. In this case, we don't have a specification. And lastly, I would add any other detail relating to the product. So you might want to add that this is a double velvet paint, it has a low sheen or a high sheen, or you might want to add anything to do with how to look after the product or clean the product, etc. This is typically how we would write our finishes description. So at any point in your project, when someone asks what finish have you applied to the space, this is the typical setup or progression that I would use. So interior finishes most of the time are non-structural elements. They have a decorative purpose or both decorative and functional. These finishes can be described as the actual element that has been applied to the surface. So let's take another example of a floor finish or carpet. Have a look at the image on your screen. Your floor finish in this case is carpet, but we do need to include more detail when adding this to our specifications or our drawings, or when we're explaining to a supplier, or even if you're just keeping notes for your own record. So let's start off by naming the product. In this case, I know the name is an Anderson Tuftex carpet. I would then add my color. I know that the color is Cliff Edge. I would then add the code of the color. So the code of the color I have found is 00754. And then I don't have any specification on this carpet. I've only got detail. And I have found that this carpet has a 10-year loop warranty, which is obviously great for the client and great information to pass along. From this description, we understand what the material is being applied to, so in this case, a floor surface, as well as get so much information about the floor, which is useful to everyone working on the project with you. It's a great security gate to avoid any errors during ordering or specifying your finishes, so no one gets lost or misunderstands what finish you're ordering. Guys, don't take this lightly. This does happen in your projects. Specify your finishes. Be very careful when choosing and specifying these finishes. And when I speak about specifying, this is exactly what I mean. The naming structure, how you specifically allocate the name and codes to the finishes on your projects. Let's have a look at this example of this living room. Can you list some of the finishes that you can see in the room that have been incorporated in the design? The finishes that you can see within the space. You can pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. What finishes can you see in the space? So some of the finishes that I can see are our timber or vinyl flooring. So I would specify that in the same way. The name, the code, the color, the description, any specification linked to that product. Another wall finish I can see is that we've got a charcoal paint which has been applied to the wall. Our couch has a finish, so we've got a fabric on the couch. We need to specify that finish. And we also have a joinery finish. We can see that there's mirror being applied to the side tables. I'm sure there's a lot more joinery in this room that we can specify. So this exercise is to understand what in your project you need to be specifying. What do we need to add detail to for the builder to build the project? So as we can see in this case, we've got a floor finish, a wall finish, a furniture finish, and a joinery finish. When starting the process of choosing or sourcing interior finishes for your project, there are so many factors to consider. Many finishes are generally chosen because they are functional. Here we start to see the value of function over aesthetics. So when selecting finishes for your project, you need to consider the function of the space and subsequently the value and the function of the material selection. Sourcing and selecting material finishes for your project needs to be carefully done. So really think about what finishes are going into the space and how that space is going to utilize those finishes. Choosing the right finishes will make a difference between a basic look and one that is innovative, exclusive, and stylish. The interior designer will provide the client with a holistic interior design service which assists with the selection of finishes such as carpets, tiles, paint finishes, wall coverings, light finishes, furniture, etc., etc. Depending on the scope of the project, there would be no point in creating a beautiful space or a beautiful lounge in your brand new home if you cannot use the couch because your husband's jeans have rubbed off on the fabric or you've left paint or finger marks on the paint on the walls. An interior design is not always about creating the best or trendiest design. It's about creating spaces that are easy to function in and are user-friendly. Very important. Your spaces need to be user-friendly. It is also important to understand the value and characteristics of each finish that you're looking to apply to the space. You might put a tile in a bathroom because it serves a very practical purpose. It's easy to clean and it's very durable. At the same time, there are aesthetic and design considerations that influence how the interior of a space flows and is used. This also needs to be taken into consideration. Before you start sourcing or selecting finishes for your project, you would need to have gone through all of our processes on our design timeline. So essentially, where are we at this point? So we started off by meeting our client, which we've done. We should have created the project brief. And by this, I mean gathered all the information about the project, which is going to assist us in our material selection process. At this point, we would have also conceptualized the design and started the development process of our design scheme. From here, we begin sourcing. So our design scheme is going to help us with our sourcing selection. By this point, we've provided all the conceptual information about the project, as well as conveyed the mood that we're wanting to create in the space. Part of our design scheme, as we've learned in the previous lesson, is to create our design boards where we add the detail of the finishes that we're proposing for our project. By this point, we have an idea of the finishes, so your color, your texture, and your shade. These are the items that we're wanting to bring into the design. But we need to take this into a little bit more detail and depth. We need to start sourcing the finishes that we're wanting to incorporate into the project. So not just a high line level of color. So for example, the tile, we've got a gray tile. What gray tile are we using? We need to really get detailed about the specifics of each product. Let's look at what it means to source your finishes. To source material literally means to find an exact material from the main source that you'd like to use within your projects, to select the material that best suits your design. So you can source materials digitally, or you can source your materials physically. Physically means to travel to showrooms and factories to choose and select material options that you want to present to your client. These are the ideas and materials that you want to use within your design. During this process, we meet with suppliers and explore showrooms. So let's begin our sourcing process. Next, we're going to look at everything about a showroom. What is a showroom? It's an important aspect to our sourcing process, but can anyone tell me what the showroom actually is? You can pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. What do you guys think a showroom is? A showroom is a space dedicated to showing and displaying product. A showroom is what a company uses to display, advertise, and market their products. So you get all kinds of showrooms, from car showrooms, fashion showrooms, right to interior design related showrooms. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. It's like browsing the aisles of a shopping mall, but you would be browsing the aisles of a bathroom or kitchen showroom. Let's take a look at some of the showrooms you as the designer would use when sourcing your samples and finishes. And we are going to start off with our furniture showrooms. If you were looking for a new couch, you would typically go to a furniture showroom or a furniture store where they would have all the furniture that is available to you in that specific store set out on a showroom floor. So it showcases the furniture. I would be able to walk the aisles looking at each furniture piece and even be able to trial out some of the furniture. It also helps to give a better idea or a better sense of how each piece of furniture functions in the space. So the qualities of the furniture, we can look at fabrics, we can get very detailed when we're walking these showroom floors. We dive back to Sophia's office renovation. So remember, we created our design boards based on Sophia's office. So we're going to use those boards to decide what we need to source, what products we need to source for this project. So based on this layout, can you tell me if there's anything from a furniture store that you think that we will need to source? Pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. What do we need to source from a furniture store? So I can see that we're going to need 2 desk chairs, 2 office chairs. We're going to need 2 desks. We're going to need 6 boardroom chairs. And we're going to need 1 boardroom table. To get all of this information and specification on these furniture items, I would typically go to a furniture showroom to find as many options as I possibly can. Next on our list is our kitchen showroom. This type of showroom may show anything to do with your kitchen, anything produced by a specific company that has any relation to the kitchen. So kitchen design companies usually feature some sort of unique mock-ups for the customers to look at, and some of them even customize in-house quality stuff created by designers. Let's take a look at these kitchen showrooms in a little bit more detail. What do they do for us? So firstly, they showcase material and kitchen related finishes. Anything relating to your kitchen you would find in a kitchen showroom, right from counter surfaces to sanitary ware to kitchen door handles to under counter lighting, etc. Anything relating to this kitchen. It also shows us the availability and accessibility of kitchen products. So going to these showrooms might give us an idea of what is available at the moment. Is it something that's in stock? Are these items lead time items, which means do we have to order them and wait a little while? Are any of these items, we might get an idea of availability of finishes or anything that is available or accessible to the kitchen. And then also going into these kitchen showrooms, they show mock-ups of kitchens. So they've created these showrooms as if the client was walking directly into a kitchen. And this is great because it provides a lot of inspiration and it opens our ideas and our minds up to what is available. Let's pop back to Sophia's office renovation. Do we have any kitchen-related items here that we need to source? Can you see anything relating to a kitchen? Pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. Why would we need to go to a kitchen supplier? Yes, we do. We have a whole new kitchen that needs to be incorporated. So we need to design and supply this new kitchen that sits in the boardroom. So in this case, I would go to a kitchen showroom to look at the countertops and material finishes that are available to me when designing this kitchen. Next on our list of showrooms is our bathroom showroom. These types of showrooms feature a number of things related to bathrooms, from your taps, your sinks, your basins, your baths, vanities, along with any few mock-ups of bathroom combinations. In these kinds of showrooms, you would typically have sections divided up, showing a bathroom section and then everything relating to your bath, maybe showing a shower section and then everything related to your shower. These showrooms are incredibly exciting showrooms to visit. They've got all sorts of colors and elements that make up the bathrooms. So if I was renovating a client's bathroom, and looking for a black basin, I would typically start at a bathroom showroom. They also show us the availability and accessibility of products. So if an object or an item was something that needed to be ordered and had a long lead time, they would tell us this. Or if they had stuff in stock, they would also be able to tell us this. So there's a lot of information that can be gathered from these bathroom showrooms, or in fact any showroom. These bathroom showrooms are also great because they're able to show us what a product feels like. We're able to use it. We're able to see how a product functions. So, for example, in the image on your screen, we can actually climb into the bath. We can turn the tap on. So these product and bathroom showrooms are developed in such a way that we can actually use the products available on the floor. Next on our list is our ironmongery showroom. This would display any type of joinery accessories from handles to hinges. So if you can see in the image on your screen, we can see a variety of handles relating to joinery. If you wanted to source something original, an original door handle or cabinetry, this is where I would come, as these showrooms showcase handles. They also show the availability and accessibility of door handles. So if I wanted to source something that was unique or something that I haven't seen on the internet, I would typically phone up a joinery showroom, ask them if they had something similar, and they would be able to advise me accordingly. Next on our list is our flooring and tiling showroom. Flooring and tiling showrooms generally feature a number of wall tile and floor options. These companies use their showrooms to feature different kinds of flooring patterns and floor options. The walls usually have sliding shelves in each area or in each section, which display features and tiling combinations as well as timber and flooring combinations. Typically, these showrooms would showcase carpeting, timber, synthetic floors such as vinyl and laminates. Tiling may be included here, or tiling may have its own separate showroom, as tiling has such a vast variety of types and patterns and needs quite a lot of space. So you could break it up that you have your carpeting showroom with your vinyl and then a separate tiling showroom. Next on our list to have a look at is our wall finishes and fabric showroom. So you would typically find wall finishes or any finishes that apply to walls in these showrooms. If I was looking for some inspiration of what to apply to my walls, I would typically come to a wall finishes showroom and have a look through the wallpaper and paint finishes on offering. If I was looking to recover a couch, I would typically go to a fabric showroom, as they would show rows and rows of all sorts of beautiful fabrics on display. We would be able to see color, texture, pattern, size, all in reality. You would even be able to drape the different fabrics over existing colors to assess if the chosen color scheme works in harmony with your existing color scheme or existing color palette. Let's take a little look at Sophia's office space again. Are there any wall finishes that we need to source for? Pop your answers in your Morpheus text box. Can you see a need for us to go to a wall finishes showroom? So I see one main option or one main element here. We need to paint out Sophia's walls. Another element I'm going to add in here, and this is coming out of my design scheme, I'd like to add a little bit of wallpaper. Therefore, we need to go through and go and have a look at a wall finishes showroom to source samples and finishes for these areas. Next on our list are interior design showrooms. Even interior designers can have showrooms. So these showrooms would show a little bit of everything. They would typically showcase work that their suppliers are able to produce in order to sell the interior design services. Interior design showrooms are basically created to highlight their creativity and expertise and the service that's provided by that specific company. It consists of several mock-ups of bathrooms, bedrooms, kitchens, living rooms, retail sectors, dining rooms, etc., and they can be visited by the client. So interior designers may showcase or hold a lot of their meetings within their own showrooms. There are so many varieties of showrooms. These are just some of the main ones that you will find on a daily basis. You can also digitally look for these showrooms by typing in what you're looking for into Google within the area that you live or work in, and a whole lot of options will pop up and come available to you. Having had a look at the showrooms, let's look at some of the benefits showrooms can provide us. Can anyone tell me why a showroom is important? Pop your answers into your Morpheus text box. Generally, showrooms are beneficial for the following reasons. Firstly, they allow us to experience the product firsthand in reality. We can access and assess each product. We can touch, see, feel, and smell it in person. If we were looking at a textured wallpaper, you may like to run your hand along the wallpaper. It may have too much texture or too little texture. You won't know it until you see it in person. And that also applies to color. So looking at a colored wallpaper on the screen may be a little bit less vibrant than looking at it in reality, or even the other way around. Showrooms are also beneficial as they allow us to test the product to be able to advise our clients accordingly. We're able to use and test the product to ensure that it's suitable for the product application within the space that we're looking to work within. If you have a client who's left-handed and, for instance, the bathroom tap has a handle that only works on the right-hand side, it may not quite work for the client, but you wouldn't know that until you're using the tap for yourself. You have to be in the mindset of the client at all times, especially when running the aisles of these showrooms. Another important element of a showroom is it opens up our mind to what is available and what is trendy. These showrooms generally showcase the best that is on offer for the specific product offering. So, for example, if we're looking back to our grey tile, it may show a variety of options of grey tiles, but also may show us the best option for the use that we're wanting in the space. These showrooms may also show us something that we have never seen before. So showrooms generally try to keep their product offering as fresh and within the latest trends as possible. Another benefit of a showroom is it allows us to become a semi-expert in that specific product. So being able to look at the showroom and see the product, use the product, and deal with the supplier allows the designer to absorb all of the information relating to that specific project or product for further use. It's much easier to specify material when you know what the material value and the characteristics are of that material. So, for instance, back to our grey floor tile, if you only knew it was a grey floor tile, how would we know that it's durable enough to put into Sophia's office? We wouldn't. We'd need to go to the space, see what makes up the product, see how the product can be used, and even actually walk on the tile. I would probably go and take a walk on the tile or the carpet that we're using. Another beneficial characteristic of a showroom is that it allows us to obtain samples to bring back to the client. So once we've chosen a few of the material types that we want to use within our project, you would approach the supplier or the store clerk and ask them to provide samples that we can bring back to the office to show our client in reality. Obviously, within reason, you would ask for samples such as tiles, paint, textures, fabrics, smaller items, but you wouldn't necessarily ask to take an entire toilet home as a sample. This is an instance I would ask for a high-res photograph of the item and take that and apply it to my design board or sample board. Another beneficial characteristic to your showroom is that it provides us or the designer with designer discounts. Generally, these showrooms offer us as designers a designer discount because as designers we tend to keep bringing in clients back to the showroom, which results in a type of bulk purchase or bulk purchase order scenario. It's generally a good idea to develop a really good relationship with your supplier and to increase the productivity levels. This will maintain a great discount. So obviously with your discount, there are always T's and C's, but you can discuss that directly with the supplier. In some instances, the more clients you bring to the store, the bigger the discount will be. But again, the T's and C's do apply. So really start developing great relationships with your suppliers, chat to them, let them know what projects you're working on, and you'll see the benefits evolve from there. Let's have a little look at the tip of the trade. It's important to allow yourself some time to source materials and finishes from the different suppliers or different showrooms. This keeps it fresh and up to date with ideas and designs in the industry and keeps us and the suppliers on their toes. So allowing yourself time allows yourself space to spend time researching, finding the best quality and the best product. Another really great app that I've started working with is called Milanote. So this I use to add any supplier details or product information that I found along my sourcing journey. So as you can see with Sophia's office renovation, I found a really nice grey tile that we looked at in our design board. I've added it to my Milanote board. I've put the link to the website of the supplier that I'm using. So in this case, I'm using CTM. It's a tiling supplier. I've put it underneath the image of the tile that I like. And when I click on the link, it takes me directly to the tile that I want to use, and then obviously has a list of all of the detail and specification underneath. So it's really nice. It's access at your fingertips. As you can see, I've done the same with the wallpaper supplier. I'm adding wallpaper to Sophia's office space. I'm taking a little link note. I'm adding the link to the website for Wall Coverings Inc. I put a picture of the wallpaper that I like, and then I click on the link and it takes me directly to the wallpaper supplier. Sometimes when I'm looking for products or suppliers and I don't have time to go to the showrooms, I may browse the internet or sites that have suppliers grouped together in one location. So have a look at this example. It's called Decor and Design. It's a specifically South African site, but it's got a grouping together of all the suppliers listed or relevant to what I'm looking for. So in this case, I was looking for tiling. I clicked onto tiling on this website, and then it brings up all of the tiling suppliers. So for example, Italtile is a retail supplier for tiles. I clicked on there. I found a tile I like. I can buy it now. I can order. I can add it to my wish list. So it's very versatile and it's great because it's got everything at your fingertips. So have a look here. I just clicked on lighting because I'm also looking for lighting. Navigate to a light that I like or a supplier I like. And it's got all of the detail relevant to that element or to that sample. Now I'm looking at an ironmongery sample. I'm finding some really nice door handles. So I am actually using this in a project I'm working with at the moment. So you can see how easy it is. It's easy to navigate. And it keeps everything all in one location. So now we know where to source our materials and finishes from. We need to know the person involved in the process. What people assist us in making this process smooth and fluid. Pop your answers into your Morpheus text box if you know the person in charge of assisting us in our material selection process. The person that you're looking for is called the supplier. So what is the supplier then? A supplier is a person or a business that provides a product or service to another entity. So a supplier will supply us product as the interior designer. The role of the supplier in business is to provide high quality products for manufacture at a good price, and this would be supplied to the distributor or retailer for resale. A supplier in a business is someone who acts as the intermediary between the manufacturer and the retailer. This is great because it ensures strong communication and the sufficient quality and quantity of stock. Suppliers have a hugely important role at every stage of the project life cycle. So firstly, they're responsible for sourcing raw materials to help ramp up manufacturing for the designer. They're generally very helpful at every stage of the life cycle of the design project. They also assist in finding the best options for finishes and materials when the designer cannot. So when we're not able to, they generally do step in. Companies need to work closely with their suppliers to get the best out of the products, and as they are the experts in the field, it really helps us with detail and information about the product and application. Let's take a look at some of the factors to consider when we are sourcing our material and product from these suppliers. So as the designer, it's our responsibility to source and specify product and pieces that will best suit the project or space. With that being said, when sourcing our finishes and materials, we need to take into account the following factors relating back to our projects. So firstly, we need to look at the purpose of the space. What is the intended use for the space? How is the lounge going to function? What are we adding to the bathroom? Who is going to use these spaces? Then we need to take a look at the traffic flow. Is it a high traffic flow zone or a low traffic flow zone? Are there lots of people that are going to be using the space? And are there lots of people that are going to be exposed to the finishes that we supply in the space? Then we need to look at the functionality of the space. What functions will be taking place? Is the space going to be used for an art studio or a changing room or a gym? These functions are all going to affect the type of finishes that we choose or select for that space. And very importantly, we need to consider the budget. That goes right back to when we met our client and looked at obtaining the budget and the brief. We needed to understand the amount that the client was willing to spend on this project. It would be such a waste of time to source materials that are not going to fit in the price range that the client has allocated or set out. So work within your budget, know what the budget is. You need to work with the client to ensure that they are happy with the selections and that they understand the reason behind each selection. This will not only improve the respect the client has for you as a designer, but also assist the client in understanding how to take care of each finish and material selection. Now we know what sourcing is, let's look at how to begin the process of sourcing. So by this point, we've got a plan layout of our space, we conducted our site surveying, and we've got a brief from our client meeting. Don't worry guys, we're still going to cover our site surveys in our module 4, but for now you know where this part of the process fits into our timeline. We also have a rough idea of what the project scheme looks like from our design boards. We now need to source our samples and materials for this project. So the reason we source materials could be for one of two reasons. Firstly, it provides realistic samples for the client, so we can take the sample to the client and they can experience the sample for themselves. Secondly, it's great to decide what material we're using in the space. So if we take that sample and take it to the space, we can see how the light falls on the sample. We can see how the sample reacts within that space. So it's a great way to show and to bring the sample into the space. And it helps us decide if we want to use that material sample or not. From here, let's start the process. Let's use Sophia's office space as an example. So remember our design boards we created in our previous lesson? Here is a copy of it on our screen. Now we have a plan for the space. We've got a design idea and direction of where it's going. But what finishes are we proposing to use? How do we start? In our design scheme lesson, we roughly laid out some of the finishes and ideas that we intended on using in our office renovation. Items such as your grey floor tile, your glass pendant lights. I've allocated some occasional seating in a blue or a greeny color and a grey. But what is the detail? Which lights are we actually going to be used? What furniture piece are we actually going to use? Where can we find it? What are the characteristics of these items? There's just not enough detail here for the contractor or client to purchase any of these products or items. We need to provide more detail. We need to source each finish and specification and provide detail on them for the other teams working on this project. When beginning sourcing and the sourcing process, we need to think about the following. Firstly, how do we start? What is the best process to follow? Secondly, what are the important factors to consider when choosing our finishes? How do we go about choosing our finishes? What areas are we sourcing these materials for? And then that leads into the function of each space. Next, we're going to look at what characteristics must we look out for in the product or the material that we've chosen. So, for example, what are the characteristics of the grey tile that we're specifying for Sophia's office? Next, we look at how the client influences our sourcing process. So in this instance, how does Sophia influence what finish I'm going to select for my office space? Next, we look at how do we make our final decision? How do we know what finish is going to best suit the space? So let's take a look at these points in a little bit more detail. We start by creating a list of suppliers and finishes from our showrooms. So we've just looked at the various showrooms and places that we can source, so we know exactly where to go. So at this point with Sophia's office, I would start out by creating a list of finishes and materials that I want to source for, which I've done in an app called Milanote. This is great for grouping everything together in one location. It's a free app, so I suggest you guys check it out. As you can see, I started by listing all my finishes categories. So I've got walls, flooring, joinery, kitchen appliances, electrical, furniture, etc. So you can have any category selection listed here. These are what your finishes will be. I've then created a card of suppliers and a separate column for finishes that I have to source. I replicate the names of the finishes on the suppliers section and create separate cards for each finish category, as you can see. If I navigate to my flooring card, I've placed everything that I need to know about flooring and the flooring selection in this card, and it's specifically for Sophia's project. The name of the supplier is included here, the supplier's details, as well as a link to their website. So as you can see, I'm taking a little linking section. I'm navigating to the supplier's website. I'm copying their website and then adding that into the link section in my flooring tab. So this is specifically for a carpet because I had another idea of possibly using a carpet in this space. So I've put that link there. I'm navigating to the carpet I like. I'm copying an image of that carpet, and then it's great because I can place that same image right next to the supplier's details. So I know exactly which carpet I chose, who the supplier is, and then again, when I click on the link, it takes me to the specification and the code. And I don't know if you remember, but in the beginning of this lesson, I showed you that we need to indicate code, name, specification, and any details relating to this sample. This is where we can find it all. And you can replicate this process for all of your sample finishes. Next, we have to look at some of the questions when it comes to our material selection. And we start off with a very important question, the budget. So what budget do I have to work with? This comes from the budget that was discussed with our clients in the beginning with our client brief. How much can we allocate to each area, which essentially brings us to what we can spend on each item. This can be a rough estimate of what you're wanting to spend on the space. So, for example, if we're spending on the lower end of the price spectrum, I would explain to the supplier and ask them to show me materials and samples in the lower end of the price spectrum. But we still need to think about good quality and durability. Lower prices don't always mean lower quality. We need to always strive for the best for our clients at every stage of the design process. Next, we need to look at the safety requirements. So what safety requirements do I need to consider for that specific space? Do I need toughened glass over our coffee tables and in our windows? Do I need to ensure that our fabric is fire retardant? So this is something I always do. My fabric on all of my projects is always fire retardant. Just a little handy tip. Next, we need to look at the durability of the material or sample. How durable is that material? We want our selections to withstand the test of time. Bad quality and bad items that don't last long have a really bad reflection on us as designers. Next, we need to focus on aesthetics and comfort goals. What are the client's comfort goals? In this space, a space needs to be lived in, like a home or a living room. Aesthetics are a really important factor to consider when choosing your samples and materials. Next on our list, we need to look at the characteristics. What makes up the product? So we need to pay attention to each characteristic that makes up the material and the material that we've selected. We need to assess these characteristics of each of the material items that we're proposing for the space to see if it suits the client's objectives and the functions that are going to be taking place within that space. This ties into the research of each product. We need to understand the qualities that make up a good product and understand what we're specifying for the space. So as an example, would you use a non-slip resistant tile in a bathroom? No, this wouldn't be a good idea at all. There's lots of water in a bathroom, and obviously we wouldn't want our client to slip on the floor. An important characteristic to look out for in general is that you have a non-slip resistant finish in wet spaces. This is just one area or one scenario. There's plenty to look out for. So again, back to the understanding of the characteristics, we really need to apply knowledge when choosing samples or material finishes. Let's take a look at an example. This is a local tiling supplier in my area, and I've navigated to their website and found the tile spec I want. So I'm looking through the tile spec that I want to apply to Sophia's office renovation. I find the tile spec I like, I click on it, and then it lists all the details relevant to that tile, as you can see. So it gives me the name, it gives me the size, it gives me the price. It also gives me a description of that tile, as well as any information pertinent to the installation of that tile or care and use of the tile. So this is great to have at hand when we're wanting to specify a tile. Obviously, you can also ask your supplier this information, but if you don't have a lot of time and you're wanting to find something quick and easy, here all the information is handy. Gathering this information should be done for every floor finish or every finish that you've got on your project. So anything that I want to add into my project, I'm adding it to my Millernote board under my project heading or project detail. I give a little heading of what I'm looking for, what the finish is. So for in this case, instance, a yellow tile. I'm going to add the link to the supplier's website. So I'm navigating to the CTM, which is a local brand in South Africa. I'm looking at which tile would best suit, and instead I'm going to change to a subway tile, so I'm not going to use the yellow one anymore. I'm going to click on the link to the supplier's details, pop it into the link in the URL section. And this is great. So whenever I want to navigate back to this tile, if I want to order it, if I want to know any more detail, all I do is go to my Milanote board. Everything's there. I click on the link and it takes me directly to the tile and the specification. Next, we need to look at how the client influences our finish selection. So remember back when we took our client's brief, we gathered all the information about the client's likes, their dislikes, the project goals, and the style direction we needed to go in. This all needs to reflect in your product finish selection. So remember, anything the client disliked, we can't include in our project. We need to make this something the client feels happy about and feels comfortable with. And lastly, we need to look at how to make that final decision. How are we going to make the final selection on our finishes? Knowing how other projects have worked during your time as an interior designer or how other samples have worked on these projects may help you decide. Otherwise, another solution is to ask the experts. These are suppliers that have worked directly with these materials. Don't be scared to ask for advice and help. That's what the suppliers are there to do. Don't be scared to take as many samples and source as many products as you can. The more information gathered, the more you learn, and the better you are equipped to make that final decision on whether these samples and finishes are the best selection for your space. Well done, you have now successfully been on your material sourcing journey. These materials and samples are ultimately going to be signed off by your client in the form of a sample board. And don't worry, we are going to learn exactly how to create our sample boards in Module 3. Let's do a quick recap. For this lesson, we learned what sourcing is and how to define sourcing. We looked at how to source materials, so how we go about gathering our materials. We looked at the importance of sourcing and the benefits around sourcing materials and samples. We looked at where you can source materials from, as well as the process flow and how you go about sourcing these materials. And that brings us to our challenge for today's lesson. Your challenge for this lesson is to familiarize yourself with the sourcing process. We're going to be looking for a gray and a white tile that we can use for Sophia's office renovation, as well as a white and charcoal gray paint finish. Try and select items that harmonize with each other so you can apply your principles and elements here. Take a trip down to your local flooring and paint supplier and ask them to assist you in finding a durable gray and white tile that's suitable for medium traffic zones. The tiles need to be aesthetically pleasing and slip resistant, and the paint samples need to be easy to clean and hard wearing. Ask for all the information and the codes and the characteristics of each tile and each paint sample, and use this to apply to a Milanote board. So I'm going to suggest you going onto Milanote, going onto the Milanote website, creating a board as I showed you on this lesson or in this lesson, and then applying all the information. So adding your pictures of your sample finish, adding the website of the supplier that you're using, and then adding any characteristics, details, and codes of those specific samples. You could include where you sourced the tile from and the paint from, where it's going to be installed, and any specific characteristics of those finishes. You can even add your floor plans of Sophia's office that I have supplied in your summary notes and any other elements relating to this plan. You can PDF or screenshot your boards and post them to your social media platforms, and you can use your hashtag IDChallengeM2 and L6 because we're in Module 2 of Lesson 6. Don't forget to keep up with your lesson assignments. You should be on your assignment 3 of your Module 2 by now and flying with all your knowledge that we've built up to date. These assignments are great foundations to get you through your final assignment, which ultimately means one step closer to your diploma in interior design. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson, the end of Lesson 6, as we start creeping closer to the end of our Module 2. You're doing so well. Keep up the hard work. Happy learning, and I can't wait to see you for Lesson 7.